Imagine a frantic, chaotic scene. A group of people stand waist-deep in a rushing river, desperately pulling exhausted, drowning victims from the freezing water. The rescuers are completely drained, but they refuse to stop. Society loves moments like this. We take photos of these rescuers, we shower them with media attention, rack up millions of likes online, and universally praise them as heroes. But right in the middle of this chaotic rescue, one figure breaks away from the group. They turn their back on the drowning victims and start sprinting up the riverbank, fighting against the current. The other rescuers yell out, asking what on earth they are doing. The runner shouts back, "I'm going upstream to catch the person throwing them in." This river illustrates two paths of problem solving. The pulsing red zone at the bottom is downstream, where we react to a crisis already happening. The clean blue arrow points upstream, where we prevent the crisis entirely. We are addicted to downstream rescues. We love the drama. But if you have to rely on a hero to save the day, your system has already failed. So why do we consistently ignore upstream solutions? Preventing a problem actually goes against human nature, because a truly successful upstream intervention is completely invisible. Nothing happens. Economists explain this friction through a concept called positive externalities. Look at this diagram. In an upstream system, figure A puts in the heavy lifting, paying the cost and doing the work, but the reward flows almost entirely to figure B. The fixer rarely gets the direct benefit. This mismatch destroys the incentive to prevent disasters. No one writes a check for a crisis that hasn't happened. The system stalls. To see how this plays out in the real world, we can compare the healthcare systems of the United States and Norway. Both countries spend roughly a similar percentage of their GDP on health, but they spend it in entirely opposite directions. This is a Norwegian medical center. Norway operates aggressively upstream. Routine prenatal care for expecting mothers is completely free. Delivery is free. Paid maternity leave is a standard right. They spend their money catching complications before the baby is even born. Compare that to this dark, empty hospital room in the United States. The US spends almost exactly $1 on prevention for every dollar spent on treatment. Massive medical spending often only kicks in after a mother or child is already in mortal danger. The results are stark. The American approach generates incredibly dramatic, high-stakes medical rescues. The Norwegian approach simply produces quiet, healthy populations. Our economies are naturally wired to write checks for the visible, dramatic rescue. We struggle to fund the quiet, boring work of keeping people safe. There is perhaps no better example of the upstream worker's dilemma than the year 2000 bug. Throughout the late 1990s, programmers spent millions of invisible hours and billions of dollars digging into legacy code to fortify the world's digital infrastructure against a massive date rollover crash. And then came the climax. Because the code held, January 1st, 2000 arrived, and absolutely nothing went wrong. The power stayed on, the banks stayed open. But instead of being hailed as global saviors, the software engineers were heavily mocked. The public accused them of being alarmists who hyped up a hoax just to make a quick buck. A perfectly prevented disaster looks exactly like a disaster that never existed in the first place. So how do we fix this? Economists argue the solution is internalizing the externalities. We have to take the cost of prevention and directly reconnect it to the people who actually benefit from it. Think back to the river. The chaotic rescue effort only stops when the person standing upstream, throwing people into the water, is handed the massive bill for the downstream rescue crew. You apply this logic everywhere. You separate a volatile couple before a domestic tragedy happens. You provide stable housing before they become homeless. You maintain an elevator cable before it snaps. But doing this requires a specific psychological shift. Author Dan Heath puts it perfectly. If you want to work upstream, you must be intensely impatient for action today, but highly patient for the results tomorrow. Warning signs of a crisis are almost always visible in the background, long before disaster hits. We must train ourselves to look upstream. A healthy society prioritizes the hard, invisible work that ensures tomorrow is just another completely boring day.